everybody, welcome to the recovery scene. Tonight I have Barbie Beck with us. Her addiction started, well, she started using drugs for the first time when she was 9 and battled with it until she was about 26. So I am going to let Barbie take it away. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you hear. And Barbie, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And hopefully I am able to enunciate my words too. At this time, it's usually my bedtime. You would think when we're out there in that pattern and using going to bed at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., or never going to bed at all. But yet you get sober and you're like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. Why am I not in my PJs? That's just me. I'm like an old spirit now.
I have no chemical help. I cannot stand it. It's just not happening.
I get off of work and I'm like, help me. I need my bed. Even if I don't got to do nothing. But thank you for having me. So first and foremost, I just wanted to give a really quick background that everybody on my mom's side of the family, they're completely not substance abuse normal. Because there's no such thing as normal. I've come to this extreme conclusion that there's no such thing as normal. Not even the setting on a washing machine is normal, because there's a whole bunch of different washing machines out there. There's General Electric and Samsung, whatever, and they all work differently, just like we all work differently. The only difference is when you're an addict and an alcoholic, your body just acts abnormally as opposed to somebody who doesn't have it. Right. Everybody on my dad's side, though, they're the hardcore, completely at it. And my parents divorced at an early age. And my whole life, I kind of felt like there was something missing inside of me. There was this huge, huge, huge hole that no matter what I did, I just couldn't seem to neither fill or get better. I remember struggling because my story has a lot of mental health as well. Mm-hmm. I know health is one of the main reasons why I used. It was my first coping mechanism. I tried alcohol at the age of 9. Because of my dad, and I'm not going to sit there and say I liked the taste of it. I was fucking 9 years old. What 9-year-old likes the taste of alcohol?
Right.
I'm very active, and I do work in a 12-step fellowship. And in that book, it does say that typically alcoholics drink because we like the effect of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And yeah, in the beginning, it was what's this? But that really wasn't my first drug. My first drug, because my mom's side of the family were normal and I lived with them, was sneaking around to get it. My mom would have these huge, huge bottles of really good vodka, tequila. And my uncle, who was younger than her, we all lived, because Spanish families all live together. My dad's side, they're completely, everybody lives separate. They're white, and my mom's side, they're that typical Spanish where we all live together. And my uncle was younger, and he was in his 20s, so he was in that party scene, single, and so I knew at a young age that he would be the one to get the blame for that. But really quick, because during my parents' divorce, I would see my mom during her depressions. My mom has untreated mental health that she, that's just part of her journey. Whether she ever wants to address it or not, that's going to be on her. It's always been a huge strain on our relationship. But at the end of the day, I only have to worry about Barbie, and following Barbie is obviously Barbie's kids. But if Barbie's not taking care of Barbie's not going to be able to take care of Barbie's kids. But my mom's untreated mental health, because of that, I would see her. I would be 8 years old, and this is what gave me the idea of drinking to cope with my problems. So basically, my mom would drink during the divorce. I would sit there and I would see her drinking as though she would be depressed for days. And I remember wondering what is this stuff that's keeping mommy in bed? And eventually I was let me just taste it. And as a little kid, take a few hits, even if it's disgusting, it's going to do something to you. And so I was I like this stuff. And from that point, it didn't matter what either somebody said, they didn't like my shoes or they didn't like my hair. I immediately went to alcohol to cope. And like, I always dealt with the depression. I had suicidal thoughts as early as like the 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
Um, you know, like that's something that, you know, looking back on that, you know, I realized like played a major role into my depression. Not to say I didn't have trauma in my childhood, because I did, and not to say, you know, which I will get into the trauma as an adult. But it played a major role, like the untreated mental health part of it. Because even when I did do, like when I got to high school, because my family was also like very strict and I wanted to be free, I'm rebellious, you know, self-will run riot completely. I was always like like, because I felt different. I didn't feel like I was part of anything. I didn't feel like I was part of my family. I didn't feel like, even though like I always had a lot of friends, I was always able to blend in everywhere I went, I still never felt like I was fully accepted. And like looking back at it now, it definitely doesn't matter whether other people accepted me, but B, the problem was I didn't accept me. And, you know, but by the time I was 16 years old, I was a full-blown drunk. And my mom would sit there and tell me that you have a drinking problem. You're like your dad. You're going to be like your dad if you don't stop. And I told her, you're fucking whack, because I'm a teenager. I know better than you. And I'm just having fun. I'm experimenting. I'm doing what teenagers do.
Right. And you know what's funny is quite a few of the addicts that I have interviewed say the same thing. Never felt like I fit in. Never felt like I fit in. Like that's a huge thing for us. And it's because we're not comfortable in our own skins. And so if we don't like us, we feel like nobody else does either.
Exactly. And it took me, you know, because even when I got sober at the age of 28, I'll be 32 this year, and I'm not going to say how long, you know, because we won't confirm or deny the actual month. We'll just keep, you know. The last time that I got sober, I hated myself. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. And it took a lot of work for me to be able to look at myself in the mirror, but I had never fully accepted everything that I was. And it took last year, that relapse, for me to accept and fully love who I was, even if it means not having a filter, which I lack a filter. But that's okay, because at the end of the day, like, I'm being true to me and I'm being true to what I have inside. And as long as I'm not doing anything maliciously to hurt somebody or say something bad, like, that's okay, because at least I'm being true and I'm being my authentic self, and I'm not caring what other people think, because I went almost 4 years caring what people thought and people would say. And like, that's no way to live, you
No.
know, like, at all. And it just goes back into like the people pleasing, because my whole life, like even in high school, even as a full-blown drunk, I got good grades. I did sports. But my first solution, because I'm also that kind of person, if you tell me that I can't do something, I'm gonna freaking do it. So when my mom told me that I had a drinking problem, I said, after telling her no, and then in my head, I had this great idea that was not only going to fill the hole inside me, it was also going to prove my mom wrong, that I wasn't going to be an alcoholic like my dad. Because you see, also what kept me sick for a very long time was the image in my head that an addict or an alcoholic is that person that's homeless, sleeping on a bus bench or behind the convenience store, or the girl that's walking down, you know, the highway trying to sell herself. Like, that was what an alcoholic in my mind was.
Exactly. A lot of us do that, and we're like, we don't have a problem. There are still people who got clean, and they're like, yeah, but I was never addicted. I just felt that, you know, it was a problem for me.
Yeah, well, it was a real problem.
Right.
And, you know, but the solution that I came up with, this bright idea that was going to save me, was I was going to join the army. So I did. Right out of high school, I joined the army. And I thought the army was going to save me. So I don't know if you know anything about the army or the military.
My dad was in the army, but myself, no.
Well, do you know how their social life is, or the things they do after hours? It's nothing but drink, 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 drink. So here I am already knowing that I was drinking too much. Well, I didn't know. I didn't think that I was drinking too much. And then even in the army, in my head, I would sit there and be like, "Oh man, I could just hang with the guys." But the truth is when you're 5'1" and you can outdrink all your guy friends, let alone military guy friends, you might have a tiny problem.
Right.
But because I'm 5'1", but I think I'm 6'4". So I would get very, very like nasty. Like I was never like a good drunk. And I guess maybe, a lot of that does have to do with, certain things that I witnessed as a child growing up. So I would go from like 0 to 100 really quick, and having the untreated mental health part of it at the time didn't help at all. And I remember, you know, I would sit there and tell myself, well, I'm only drinking on the weekends. I'm not drinking during the week, so I'm not an addict. I'm not an alcoholic, and I still have a job. I still have a career, and that kept me sick for a little bit, until eventually, nobody wanted to get alcohol from me no more because of the way I got. And like when I like to use alone. I'll use around people if I have to, just so they could give me what I need. But when at that point, being underage, I needed people to get it for me. But I was very content with using by myself. I'm the kind of addict and alcoholic that I'm an isolator because I don't want to share, and I don't want nobody messing with my drunk or high.
Right. It wasn't about, that's when you realize, and that's for anybody watching who's thinking, well, I don't know, maybe I have when it gets to the point where it's not about the socialization anymore. It's not about going out with your friends for drinks anymore. It's just about the buzz. And I don't want anything messing with that buzz. I don't want any social, Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and heaven forbid you interrupt my session of self-loathing. Heaven forbid you do that. You can't, I was like the Grinch. You can't interrupt my sessions of self-loathing.
Right.
Like,
Speaking of self-loathing, excuse all my sniffing. This weather is making, I'm in South Carolina and it's like rainy cold. So no matter what I do, my nose is running. So y'all, I'm very sorry. Anyway.
About our day, because I live in South Florida.
Yeah, so you're good. I did not move to Michigan to have to scrape anything off my car.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, right. Self-loathing. Don't interrupt the self-loathing. That's where you were. Sorry.
So I made best friends with this one girl who was married, and she would sit there and she would tell me, hey, I'll go get you a bottle if, all you have to do is just stay in the barracks and cover for me. And what she was really doing was she was going and she was cheating on her husband. And I was okay with that. Like, I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care who was getting hurt as long as I was getting what I wanted. About a couple months of that went by, and he eventually found out. And the very next day, because he also had so-called treated mental health, but I guess he had stopped taking his meds. He was manic. And when he found out she was cheating on him, the very next day he came and he found us at the PX, and he came and he shot at me, missed me, shot her in the head, and then shot himself in the head. And like for me today, it's so important to stay sober and to trust God, because like the first thoughts that night in my head were, who's gonna get my shit now? Like my disease is about more. It doesn't matter whether it's more drugs, doesn't matter if it's more alcohol, more money, more men, more women, you name it, it's more, and it's going to all be for me. And, after that incident, I was no longer drinking on the weekends. Weekends were off, and I managed to find spouses that had benzodiazepines. So I started taking those. And, I was literally a hot mess express. How, like, I didn't get caught, I don't know. I'm not, I want to sit there and say that it was God, but I also know that not only was it God, it was also part of his plan for me for everything else that had to happen next. So about a month and a half after that went by, and I got a call from this one guy that already had a bad reputation for taking advantage of women when they were drunk on base. And he was like, "Hey, I'm up here with so and so and so and so, and we're playing cards, and we have a bottle." I'm like, the second they said bottle, my attendants were like, "Yeah, let's go." Mind you, like to this day, I don't know how to play any kind of damn cards. Uno and Go Fish, those are the only kind of cards I know how to play. But so I went up there and, also thinking I'm invincible. I'm special. I already survived this one thing. Plus, I already hate myself. What's the worst that can happen? As long as I get my buzz out of this. And like, I end up getting beaten and raped by all three guys. And in the process, had a fractured pelvis, broken ribs. And at the hospital, got introduced to morphine. And that feeling
it's
that
one trauma after the other, and now you've got a drug that kind of takes it all away.
And at that point, that feeling that hole that I had inside, that feeling that I was missing my whole life, I felt I had arrived. And I chased after that feeling. I never felt that feeling again. To this day, I will never feel that feeling again. And then after that point, I got hooked on the opiates, and I spent years, like my solution after because I got out of the Army after that, they tried brushing it under the rug. And I stayed in victim mentality for years.
Right. Now, did they end up sweeping it under the rug?
Yeah. It's still under the rug. Like I finally started talking about it when, about, let me see, 2016, 2017 was when I finally started talking about it, when I got sober last time. And like, I realized today that I'm grateful for that. It doesn't excuse what they did by any means, but it does take away the power that they held over me for so long. I used to blame that incident for my addiction, but like, I was an addict before. I always had some kind of issues. I always found some way that I would addictively deal with my emotions and with life, and allow life to become unmanageable for myself. And today, I no longer have to be a victim. I get to be a victor. I get to choose to be strong. I get to choose to stand up for myself, and I didn't see that at the time, and today I do see that, and after that happened, I thought that there was no way, obviously with like mental health, I wanted to die. I got married right after that because I thought a husband was going to fix me. Because now this hole, after I arrived, this hole just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I would sit there and like, some people, when they sit there and say they don't believe in God, and like, that's fine, because I was so resentful 4 years ago, because everything in my life happened to me because of this forever punishing God. And I didn't want to see that, like when they explained it to me that I could choose a higher power of my own understanding. Cause like when I did like my last fourth step, God was number one on that list. Number one. Cause I was raised with this God on my dad's side. It was Southern Baptist. That's the kind of church we went to. And then on my mom's side, Catholic.
Right.
So it was so confusing. But I was taught that God is punishing. And, today I realize like my God is loving, my God is forgiving, my God is graceful, and he sends certain storms, like all these storms that were ever meant to break me, they have been the storms that he has sent to make me. And like, that's okay. Like my ex-husband, I feel like he's no mental health, no substance abuse. He is an absolutely amazing person. I gave that man PTSD. I don't know how he roughed it out 6 years of marriage with me. And I couldn't be more happier for him and his wife, and, the amazing job that they have done with, allowing all of us to co-parent the kids together. Which, by the way, 4 years ago, there was no way I'd let another woman be called mommy as well to my two other kids.
Right. Because everything is mine. Yeah. So everything's mine. And I'm always looking for something outside of myself to fix the inside. Yeah. Never works.
You could have the man, but the kids, they're mine. You know? But when obviously I realized being married or having somebody love me so unconditionally wasn't working, I thought a baby was going to fix me. So I had my first baby. And by the time I had my first baby, I already knew how to doctor shop. And because I was doctor shopping for my narcotics, whether it was benzos, whether it was, the opiates, I wasn't an addict. And, because I was getting them legally, but bro, I was out of them in 3 days, buying them on the street, but I'm not an addict. My son was 9 months old and I was taking him drive-by down, just to do a drive-by, like have my drug dealer, throw me the stuff through the car window, but like still sitting there and saying I'm not an addict.
Right. It's the insanity.
It's complete insanity, or there'd be times I'd be holding my baby, this baby that I wanted so bad, that I loved so much and still love. Oh, he's just mommy's king. They know it, all three of them. I think I put my foot down, but they know. They know who they get it over with. But like, I had this baby in my arms and I'm nodding out, from taking too many benzos, too many Percocets or blues. And, eventually, like 3 years, I just kept getting worse and worse because the disease, it's progressive and terminal. And 3 years after having my son, I said, well, this isn't working. I need to have another baby. I need to try to have a girl. Every mom needs a girl. And be careful what you pray for.
I have 3.
You tonight extra hard.
Yeah, because 2 of them I have an older one that is 8. And the other 2, they have a brother. They're triplets and they're 7. So I have 3 girls, 2 the same age, one's a year older. And then a little boy. So yeah, I know. I know. And help.
Help me. Help. Oh man. Just say it. That's my universal code. Because when I relapsed. I used to think that I didn't struggle with pride, that I didn't struggle with ego, but like I let my mental health go and I didn't reach out for help because heaven forbid anybody had to see me strong with that much time sober, who thought of me as so strong. Heaven forbid they had to see me weak.
Right.
So now by the time, like, it was a very short relapse because I did try to commit suicide. Thank God, completely thank God. But now, like, I remember getting to treatment and like my first session with my therapist, I was like, help me, fix me, help. Because like today I know, like, I've had the taste of sobriety before. I've had the taste of, how life is. And like, I would never want to, the joy and the peace that I feel inside today, I would throw away all that time anyway that I had. I'd rather be sitting in detox and feel what I feel today than be miserable, like I was towards the end. Because after I got pregnant with my second kid, by the time I got pregnant with her, my ex-husband was done. He was just completely done. And I hadn't worked in 6 years. So I knew nothing but how to depend on a man. And so the first relationship that I got into during my divorce was with I'll never go on Tinder. I'll never go on any of those dating websites again, because now I have a baby as a souvenir, because 2 other babies couldn't fix me. So I thought 3's my lucky number. So 3's going to fix me. And this man, I don't believe in any kind of character assassination. But like, this is my story. And as somebody, like, I've always been, and I realized it over the last 4 years, that one of the main reasons why I always soaked up certain emotions and everything is because I'm an empath. And this man, my youngest, her dad, I'm a psych major, by the way, and her dad is the textbook definition of narcissistic personality disorder.
Oh, those are rough.
Yeah. And now, and when I relapsed right away, because I lost custody, because what got me sober last time was all my yets that I had never did, because I had tried the detox here and there, the quick treatment, but then all these people were talking about how they did cocaine and heroin. I'm like, oh, I'm not an addict because I didn't do that stuff. And it turns out and then when I was finally doing it and just snorting it, it was like, well, I'm not shooting it, so I'm still not an addict. And then eventually with my bottom is with my third child, I'm sticking a needle in my arm for the first time pregnant. Unable to stop, unwilling to stop. The only reason why I didn't kill myself was because I felt like I couldn't kill the baby.
So many mothers in addiction have experienced that.
I knew nothing, and I was with this man that I had no idea when I got with him that because of how people with that personality disorder present themselves, nice and everything in the beginning, but he also took care of me because I hadn't taken care of myself in so long. So at this point, it's 8 years of not taking care of myself, by myself and depending on a man. And I had no idea that he was also an addict. He was sober when he met me, but I mean, in my defense, so this is why I also thought he was the one. Okay. And I'm dead serious. So our first date, he only drank 2 drinks and the bar tab was $200. So, I mean, who did it. So he paid for my $200 bar tab and took me to go cop that first date. So I thought he was the one. I knew he had to be the one. I knew
Or he sounds perfect.
he, and for 2 years, I might've been passed out the whole 2 years. And if I was awake, I was angry. But all I saw was, an ATM, but it just dispensed drugs instead, and then eventually, obviously, after my ripping and running, when somebody doesn't work a program, when somebody doesn't, or they try to mix, I could do this, I could do that, eventually they're going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And when he fell hard. And, and at that time I was already pregnant, and it was just insanity. It was complete insanity. And he got arrested 2 months before the baby was born with a lot of trafficking charges. And I see that today. At first I was like, God, why would you do that to me? I'm going to give birth alone. And, realistically, I wasn't alone. I had my mom. My relationship with my mom has never been good. But I've always sought her approval. But today I realized I don't have to seek her approval. She likes to make certain things about her. And it's at the end of the day, it goes back to the acceptance and being able to change me and being the light for myself and for the other people around me. And either you're going to accept me or you're not, but I accept me. So that's good enough for me today. But I remember giving birth, and all I could think about was leaving that hospital room to go get high. And my baby was born addicted. And obviously, if I'm using the whole time, and I didn't know that, when your baby's born addicted, I didn't know these things also. I didn't know them. But apparently when your baby's born addicted, they take custody away from at birth. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And that first month that she was in the NICU, I visited her twice. Maybe I was out getting high or trying to find ways to get high. And I couldn't live with myself seeing the little needle down her little head. And, but that's what I needed. I needed that huge wake up call because I had no idea about recovery. I had no idea about meetings, treatment, boundaries, self-love, self-care. I knew nothing about none of that. And it's her, I'm going to say her name because she's everything. Because this baby has saved my life twice now. When I relapsed last year, she saved my life. and her being born addicted saved my life, you know, but it gave me that jump. It gave me having the state take her away, gave me that chance at life again and learning what recovery was. I didn't know that I wanted to live. I didn't know that I wanted to stay sober. So I got into this thing. It's called dependency drug court. It's like drug court, but like DCF and child services and stuff. And at first I was like, the fuck is all this shit? And I'm like, I would sit there in these meetings and treatment, like first time staying in treatment. And I'd be like, I'm just going to stay sober a year. Because I was so angry because here's me being 5'1", but thinking I'm 6'4" again. Like, I was so broken and shattered that like when I was in treatment, I would walk, talk, everything looking down at the ground. I wouldn't be able to talk to you, anything. And if I looked up and I saw you looking at me, I thought you were talking about me. So I'd get angry and scream and try to fight everybody. And, you know, like that's, you know, I would sit in these meetings or like I see everybody sharing, like, you know, I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, listen, I'm just going to stay sober for 1 year, get my kids back, because don't they know who I am? I'm a good mom. Well, listen, Barbie, you know, I wish, you know, I had like a little crystal ball, a little crystal earphone to tell myself, Barbie, good moms don't take their kids on drive-by drug deals. Good moms don't hold their children when they're, you know, when they're not. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means that you can't take care of them, you know? And I would sit there and just say, and then because I don't want to kill people, I'm going to take Xanax. Like, I was convinced that I was going to have to, you know, that I was going to just get a year sober, get my kids back, get my case closed, and go back to using Xanax. Little did I know what I was doing at that time. Every time I shared that I wanted to use Xanax, was that I was sharing that burning desire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that. And, you know, I would sit there and say, well, Xanax not my drug of choice, so it doesn't matter. But the truth is my drug of choice is everything. I never did Molly or ecstasy. It doesn't mean I'm not going to fuck the shit out of that too and fuck my life off of that too. You know, I make no exception today that it could be the tiniest of, I can't even go ride motorcycles with friends and try to do that in moderation. I can't even go to like my metaphysical store to get my crystals and be okay with getting a little bit of crystals.
No.
You know, everything I do alcoholically and addictively. And I accept that today. And, you know, when I got sober last time, the first 6 months was pretty rough. I was just so rough around the edges. I didn't, like I said, I didn't know I wanted to stay sober, but like the more I kept going to these meetings after I got out of treatment, the more that I started being with people in recovery. And because at this point, like I had no friends, I had nobody. Not even my dope dealers want anything to do with me anymore. That's why that was another reason why I only went to go see the baby only 2 times in the hospital, because I had to find new dope dealers, new things. Like my dope dealer was like, you need to get some help. Like, I think that's pretty bad when the dope dealer says,
right.
and they block you. Like,
right.
You know, but I didn't see it that way, because it's like, if you had my life and you lived the life that I lived, you would use too. You know, poor me.
The pity party.
Yeah, like the whole he was there. And, you know, and then I remember by the time I had 6 months, I was taking somewhat, like I was taking mental health meds at that point, but still kind of like unwilling to accept that I had mental health, just that maybe the mental health was because of all the drugs. So I stayed on the meds for a little bit, but I wasn't really doing like any of the work. I was working and going to fellowships and going to meetings and another fellowship because I wanted to hang out. I did like the meetings, but in that fellowship, I wasn't able to form the relationships that I needed with women, because from the time there was always this voice inside my head from the stuff I would hear in treatment, like women with the women, men with the men. And like for somebody that's first into recovery, I do suggest that. Like I have a lot of guy friends today that I've never had sex with. Oh my God, it's such a shocker.
I know.
You know, it amazes me that that's a possibility now. But like in the beginning, I needed the women. I needed those women. But at that other fellowship, the women were like cliquey, and I would sit there because I was desperate. I was like, I don't want to feel that way. Because at this point, like I already have quite a few months sober from being in treatment so many months, and, and having to get drug tested all the time because of drug court. And I had a taste of belly laughs, like that first time, like after not laughing probably since I was a kid, a belly laugh. And I was like, and I would see all these glowing people. I wanted that. And the girls in this fellowship, I would try to form these relationships. I would text them, I'd call them, they would never call me back. But the guys were willing to pick me up and take me to the meetings too, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And that kept me sick, because I got to the point when I had 6 months sober, I wanted to kill myself sober. And I remember, and this was, having no God, no nothing. For the first time, I threw myself in despair on my knees, and I begged God. I was like, if you aren't punishing me, and if you really do love me and you're forgiving like everybody says you are, please take this pain away from me. Please take this pain away from me. And it didn't happen right away, because I want what I want when I want it, and it has to happen now, and I need relief now. But I kept doing it because I had no other option. And it helped, by the second, the third day. And I was like, I need to make a change. And that's when I got to the other fellowship, and I got a sponsor, and I started working my steps like that. And I started flying through them. And by the time I had 9 months sober, I was so in love with recovery. I was so in love with being able to help other people. Somebody that was so selfish, so centered. I was still a fucking sick, hot mess. I'm probably always going to have we're always going to have some kind of sickness and some kind of character defects. But today I see myself as, I tell myself, I joke around a lot. And I'm always like, well, guess what? Well, God accepts all of me, good and bad. Therefore, I accept all of me, good and bad. A lot of my friends say that's a cop-out, Barbie. Like, no, but it's true. It means I accept me no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Good and bad. There's things I can control, and there's things that I can't control about myself.
It doesn't mean you don't want to improve. It's just, but until that happens, what am I going to do? Not talk to myself?
Exactly. I'm not talking to myself all the time. Right. At work, they'll come in and be like, or I'll start laughing. Something will just pop in my head, and I'll just start laughing all by myself. And they're like, did you take your meds today? Because they know my story, that I'm in recovery, and that, I struggle with the mental health and everything. And, that's one of the blessings of, being able to be honest with not just myself, but people around me, because the right people are going to accept me. And that's a blessing in itself, because I can't wait. I'm not, after I had 9 months sober last time, about a year and a half into my sobriety last time, I started working in treatment. And I was like a little Energizer bunny being a single mom, because after a year I got my baby back, and all these different milestones. It was still the battle with her dad. And over the last 4 years, I would sit there and say, I'm taking him back to court, because when I got sober last time and I saw him when he finally got out of the jail and the baby was 6 months old, I was like, ooh, I was on some good stuff. And then to add, I didn't know what I actually didn't know what narcissism was yet. Mm-hmm. Even back in school for that yet. But just the behaviors were there, and it would literally drain me. And I would sit there, and I would have all my friends, all my support networks say, just take him back to court. But I was a single mom. I couldn't do that. I was paying child support for my 2 older children and paying all my bills by myself and everything, because this time when I did get sober, I was like, I ain't depending on no man no more. We can do this. Mm-hmm. And God is with us. We can do this. I don't need to depend on any men. It's the best feeling in the world, as to know that if I do need help, I have a great, amazing support network. I don't have to depend on the relationship with a man, especially a toxic man. And I've spent the last 4 years saying, no, he'll change. And obviously, and he has this pattern where when he's with somebody, he treats me like shit, yells at me, calls me a whore, calls me all sorts of names. And this is the sick and sane part until recently. And well, not recently, until last year,
Mhm.
was that I was okay with that because it meant that he wasn't obsessed with me. Because every time he's not with somebody, he's obsessed, infatuated with doing whatever he can to get to me and to get me. And last year in June, he broke up with one of his last girlfriends because he also does like the alky love thing, 2 weeks, move them in. And I'm more like after, like after like everything in like the early sobriety last time, I took a lot of time like single by myself, no relationship, no sex. And like I learned how to love myself. But I still didn't want to accept that I had to take mental health meds.
Mhm.
And last year in June, I went to go do a 12-step call, and he was watching the baby for me. I went to go pick her up, and he tried raping me. I was on the phone with somebody. I was on the phone with one of my clients, and one of my clients heard it all. And it after that, I went manic. I was already in like a huge depression, like for about a year, that just kept getting gradually worse and worse and worse and worse. I got diagnosed with lupus that previous year, and I was always having flares, and I was always living and doing everything for everybody else. I had took the word self out of selfless. And, like you know, that's where like when I went manic, I remember like I didn't sleep that whole night afterwards. Like he didn't make it to like take my clothes off, but it was just the fact that you went as far as even putting a pillow under the blanket and pretended the baby was in the bed. So I would climb in the bed so you could try to get on top of me with me on the phone. And like just like that, within that same week, by the I lost it. I lost my job because I was so manic. They thought I was getting high and I wasn't. Um, and then I was going up one night. I was going to go visit my best friend, and I was at a gas station at a area that's pretty well known for you could just
Yeah.
be somebody come to you, and somebody offered it to me, and I was like, you know what? Because in the past, every other time I tried to commit suicide in the past, whether it was by cutting myself, drowning myself, I never succeeded. I sucked at it. I mean, it's a good thing to suck at. Killing yourself, trying,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good skill to not have. Definitely.
yeah, that's a good skill to suck at. So I thought to myself, because when I got sober before, heroin was still heroin, and now fentanyl's killing everybody. And just like that, there was no thought behind it. I had the baby in the back. I had the baby in the back seat, and I bought it. And he was like, "Oh, do you want some powder too?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Go like I'm going to kill myself anyway. My plan was to kill myself the next day. And on the way up to my best friend's house, because she lived a little further away, I was like, fuck it, let me just, I was tired. That was the only excuse I needed. I was just tired. So I was like, fuck it. It was for free. I'm killing myself anyway. So let me do, the powder. And it was laced with fentanyl. I died behind the wheel on the highway with my baby in the car,
Jesus.
and woke up in an ambulance where the only reason why they Narcaned me, because there was nothing in the car, was because they found underneath the seat one of my old work IDs from a treatment center that I worked for. And that saved my life in a way, because there was no indications, nothing. And I was, to this day, I still remember what it felt like, because I had overdosed many times the 4 years prior, but I never felt it. But to be completely sober and feel the air come back into your lungs and in your body, like I could still hear it, feel it. Like it's one of the things I don't think is ever going to leave me. But at that point, when that happened, and I called my mom, mom was like, they said you overdosed, blah, 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 blah. She's like, you should have stayed dead. And she's like, how could you do that to the baby? And like, to this day, like my mom doesn't understand addiction or mental health. Obviously, she's not willing to work on her own mental health. And like at that point, until about a month ago, I didn't talk to my mom. And like now me and my mom, like I've been very firm with my boundaries, because at one point, like a month ago, like 2 days after we started talking, and she's like, I'm going to give you a suggestion. I know you're not going to take it. She goes, but like you should the 12-step fellowship. I don't want to say what it is just because there's tradition. It's the 12-step fellowship that you're in, because obviously it didn't work for you. She goes, you need to join like some church group. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to, I go, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to listen to you. I go, so about those boundaries again, you know, I used to be, even in like the last 4 years, I was I would let people roll over some of my boundaries. And like I sat really quick when she said that, that was my excuse to keep running. And I ran hard. For every single hour and day that I ran, I made up for those 4 years. Like when his sister and stays were always followed by still a worse relapse. I died. Those first 4 days, I died 2 times. I was hospitalized the second. And I tried white knuckling, because at that point, I went to one meeting afterwards and I thought everybody was looking at me weird because they knew who I was. I was so involved with service, and I felt all it took was just one person, when it wasn't everybody else, just one person to look down on me, for me to think that everybody was looking down on me. And that wasn't the case. It was all in here, because I was full of this shame, and but it had to happen, because I still didn't want to get back on meds. I was like, I was on meds before. And, because another thing that I learned about myself this time, if my body is telling me that something's not working, ask for something different. Definitely give it a chance to work, but ask for something different. Like you need to advocate for yourself. Like if a certain kind of medication isn't working, like you want to make sure you take care of yourself. And I wasn't doing that. And then I was missing doses, and I was all over the place. And
now, did you lose custody of the baby when this happened?
And I am in dependency drug court again, and in front of the same judge, same state attorney, same courtroom. And the ironic part about that is, or not even ironic, I think the most powerful part about it is, after my case closed last time, I stayed involved in that courtroom as a peer advocate, and they loved me. They still love me. Like, I don't think that, like a lot of people sit there and say, oh, like the state doesn't want you to get your kids back, or this or that. I don't believe in that, because I've seen a judge, I've seen even the state attorney. She's like a bulldog. Like she's barely shows emotion, but she cares. Like they care. They want you to succeed. And they saw me succeeding. They saw me at least once to a few times a month for other women, and until a month before I relapsed. And then to see me back there, and then this time to see the back and forth, with the baby's dad, because he always has something that he wants to character assassinate. And I've gotten to the point where, like, I'm not taking it anymore. I'm continuously fighting. And I think the most powerful part of that is going to be when they see the fact that I continuously have spoken up, that I've continuous, because last time I went through the motions, and I learned how to use my voice towards the end. And this time I'm making sure I'm using my voice, because at the end of the day, like if I don't use my voice for me, how am I going to use my voice for my daughter? Like my job is to be my daughter's voice. And how am I going to advocate for other women that are in my same situation? Like, yeah. And also, another great part is like the whole 4 years of not wanting to take him back to court. Now I'm in court.
There you go. Probably easy ways to get there, but there you go.
And that's because God does for me what I won't do for myself. I know there's, everybody cliche, oh, God does for us, but we can't do for ourselves. Bullshit. Because we could do stuff. We choose not to. We choose not to do that stuff. So he will choose, and he always makes it so much harder than it is for you. God will make it harder for you to stay than it is for you to leave. You know, like I had to realize this time that like the defeat, like fine, let me be defeated. I'm almost 32 years old. And I have a long life ahead of me. So I'm going to be defeated many, many times, you know? Hopefully, by God's grace and the decisions that I make, it'll never be because of drugs and alcohol again. But like I'm going to be defeated many, many, many times. And I've been defeated many, many, many times before. And every single time that I have been defeated, defeat has only been a temporary period for greater victory to be born. Every single time that that has happened to me. And when I was in treatment this time, and you know, by the way, I'm taking like the right meds now, the best meds that I've ever been on, like the best combination. Like I'll be 2 weeks away from like losing. I'll be like texting the nurse, like, help me, we need a refill. You know, or like, hey, I think my body's getting used to this. We need to do something a little different. Like I listen to those things and I do those things today. I was okay with taking a pill or shooting a needle in my arm every morning when I woke up. Why can't I do that for my medications to make sure this is okay?
Right.
You know, and like when I was in treatment, I found a saying, and it talks about like how there's this saying in Arabic, and it says, you want to kill yourself, you really don't want to kill yourself, right? If you think you want to kill yourself, throw yourself into the middle of the ocean and watch yourself drown. And the second that you start drowning, watch how you start to fight for your life. It's not that you want to kill yourself, it's more that you want to kill something inside you. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to kill inside of me. I wanted to kill the parts of me that still didn't love me and was seeking approval. I wanted to kill the fact that of all the trauma that I had inside of me and every single time that I didn't use my voice. You know, so today, like I choose to do the opposite of everything, no matter how weird, no matter how spunky, it doesn't matter. Like I choose to live today, and that's like power. And there's like this one, you know, I used to hate cliches, mainly because I hated recovery, you know, but there's this one cliche there's this one cliche, and it talks about how, you know, the whole happy, joyous, and free shit.
Mm-hmm.
That because what the fuck was happy, what the fuck was joyous and free? You mean like money free? You know, like I didn't know what they meant by that. And like last time with those almost 4 years that I had sober, I was happy. I was never fully free because I always had fear, fear of financial insecurity, fear of like, what would people think? What would people say? You know, but this time, like having to start all over again, it's been completely different. But like the joy and the peace that I feel inside today, like I know what peace and joy comes from, and that comes from being able to stay present in the present moment. I was never able to, I was present physically there, but I was never fully in the moment because I was always
Right.
thinking of what I had to do next to accomplish what I had to accomplish next. And like with that cliche, I learned this time why I really did like it so much last time. And it's, you know, not every single day I'm going to be happy. Not every single day I'm going to be joyous. But every single day that I don't use and I continue to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, it's I understand Him, I'm free. I'm free from that bondage of self. I'm free from the bondage that addiction had on me. And like that right there, that's where my happiness and joy comes from, because I get to be here today and I get to be me. Like I realized that my biggest like superpower today is being me. And like there's nothing more greater than that to me, when especially when I get to sit there and I get to be with my kids. Like my children just moved to North Carolina. My ex-husband and I came up with a new custody agreement, and it was just it was really good to have the holidays with them. Mm-hmm. And like when year old who's mini Barbie, I don't know where she gets her attitude though, at all. I don't know where she
Yeah, I don't know where mine get theirs either.
No. And the baby, she's severely autistic, and nonverbal. She has a freaking attitude too. I'm like, she says like okay and thank you, and which okay, like Delilah, come on, like okay. I'm like, you know, but I prayed for them and they are the best thing, and they really do keep me going, but I know that they can't keep me sober.
Right.
They can't sane. And I know that everything that I've been through in my life, as long as I continue to put one foot in front of the next, help the next person, be a good mom, and like be true to me, no matter what life throws at me, it's not going to be like the rest of that shit. You
Right.
know?
Right. Now, how long do you have clean now?
Since last September, my sponsor has me on this whole don't count your time thing this time.
Oh, okay. All right. Then we're going to do what the sponsor says.
Yeah. No, I know it was like the last weekish of August, because when I relapsed, after those 4 days, I relapsed again because I went manic. Because I just didn't want to live. I was white knuckling. I was running away from my program, running away from the fellowship. I didn't want to be around anybody because I was full of so much shame. And then I was just like, fuck it. Nobody's around me. I don't have my kids. I don't have anybody. And I tried. And then finally, my friends were just like, Barbie, like, we love you. Like, you have so much purpose. Look at everything you did before. Imagine all the things you're going to do. And like, I didn't believe him at the time. I was like, whatever, I'll just do it, like, and I did it, and just by that third day in detox, I was just like, I had like a spiritual experience. Like, okay, I just need to detox emotionally.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. That is so true. And somebody else said we relapse emotionally before we ever relapse physically. And I think that's so true. And so you have to detox emotionally as you detox physically. It's all tied together. Spiritual, emotional, mental, physical. It's all tied together. There's something in that chakra thing.
Oh my Lord. Don't even get me started.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh God.
Where I would be like, well, it's not, like with some people, they're like, oh, like you have to, pray to Jesus, and Jesus is the only way. And that's fine, because that's your concept. Today, like, my concept, I believe in Jesus, and I do believe in scripture. I use scripture for revelation on things that I go through in my life and what to apply, and for motivation and inspiration and affirmation from God. But like, I also believe in other things, that's why I get to be spiritual and not religious. I get to be like kind of eclectic and pull what I want, what I know works as a good doctrine for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Even if I'm crazy, and like, even, when I started doing like the TikTok thing, I was like, okay, well, let's, at first it was like for fun, and then it was like, you know what, like, it's time to, like, who cares what people say? All you need to do is make a difference with one person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when I decided to start doing like the shirts and stuff, I was like, well, I'm not going to do it unless like it's not going to go towards something. And I was like, what's one thing that means the most to me besides like anything with addiction? And it's like mental health.
Yeah.
Like, I've been that person that couldn't afford their meds for a month or so. So like, if I could do anything that I can to help somebody or find a way to do it, like, I'm going to do it. But this time I'm going to make sure that I know God saved me and gave me a life to live. And so I'm going to make sure I live it, but I'm going to make sure that I live it making, not only being happy, but making an impact on the life of others as well.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I think any kind of service work, any way that you can serve others and help others, it's so important for our recovery. It's one of the most important parts, because it gets us out of ourselves, because we tend to be very self-centered.
Yeah, but we have moderation, because sometimes when you're like Barbie Beck, you'll do it to the point where you don't have to focus on yourself. Mm-hmm. So have moderation.
Exactly. Well, Barbie, thank you so much for being on tonight. I really appreciate it, and I love your story, and I can't wait for it to get out there and reach some more people.